Hello, and welcome to my channel. As you can see, again today, we're going to be talking about 2001: A Space Odyssey. And in particular, we're going to examine some of the symbolism around eggs in the film. I know, you might be thinking that sounds strange, but actually, there are a few instances of egg symbolism in the film, and we're going to examine the meaning behind it today. Now, the first instance where we might see what I'm going to call egg symbols is possibly our first shot in the film when we see these planets rising up out of each other, though admittedly, this one might be a stretch. It's not exact, but Kubrick is often just suggestive, leaving it up to the viewer what they think the meaning of a shot is. But I think it's definitely possible. Now, the most obvious egg symbolism in the film are these hats, almost look like helmets, that the flight crew are wearing on the space shuttle. They are quite obviously egg-shaped, and these hats are even the same color as eggs. We see several different crew members wearing these on the space shuttle as they're serving trays. The next scene is suggestive in several different ways because as the crew member serves the pilots their food trays, we actually see the moon in the background, right next to the egg-shaped hat. I think both are in this shot for a reason, for their similar shape. But what does it mean? Well, look at the next shot. It's the space shuttle. The shape is similar, and the color also. I'm suggesting these space shuttles are definitely representing egg symbolism, and not just for their suggestive shape and color. But they also represent egg symbolism in their function, and the function of the spacecraft is to protect the life inside them from the harsh elements, very much like an eggshell does, albeit a highly technological and engineered eggshell in a way. And again, we see the egg-shaped craft with a similar shaped object next to it in the same shot, but this time it's the Earth, since we are now on the moon. I kind of thought this looked like a cracked eggshell opening. It's the right color again, so I guess this could be cracked eggshell symbolism too. Now, this next clip is really interesting because it contains what I'm calling double egg symbolism. Why? Well, we have our egg-shaped craft descending inside of a protective shell-type space. And the center of the space, if you look right in the center, it's literally yolk-colored. It's almost like an egg within an egg. It's a really beautiful shot. They're now on the moon and literally need these protective spaces to shield them. Again, it really does evoke sort of an egg within an egg, this craft within this sort of protective shell space. Again, this one might seem like a stretch, but because of the way the shadows are falling on the earth in this shot, it's literally egg-shaped. Once I noticed this, I can't unsee it now. It just looks like an eerie egg hanging over the strange scene below of the team seeing the 4 million-year-old monolith for the first time. This scene seems a bit more eerie to me now that I notice the egg kind of hanging over the whole scene. I don't know. Looks like an egg to me. Next, we head to the Jupiter mission ship, where astronauts Frank and Dave are. And of course, we have those protective pods for the crew members that are in hibernation, quote unquote. But these pods turn out to be not very protective for the crew members inside because Hal later shuts them off. Now, these little craft that the crew of the Jupiter mission use to go outside the main ship and do repairs, these are definitely egg-shaped and egg-colored in my opinion, and because they act as a protective shell for the astronauts inside, it's definitely more egg symbolism. In this shot, we even get that egg within an egg, double egg symbolism again, with a spacecraft coming out of a round-shaped space. It's an interesting shot. And again here, the craft, looking very egg-like, is reinforced even more with this shot of a life form coming out of the opening. This is almost like hatching when a new life comes out of an egg. I think this imagery is quite obvious. Also, note the helmet. Looks a bit like a frog or even a lizard. In the famous scene where Frank and Dave are discussing problems with the HAL 9000 computer inside one of those pod crafts, if you notice, the window behind them is egg-shaped, the window through which Hal does his lip reading to find out that Frank and Dave are discussing possible disconnection of him. Now, in the scene where Dave is outside the main ship in one of the podcraft and Hal won't let him back inside, he has to literally blow the door off the egg-shaped craft, launching himself violently out of the pod just to get back on board the main ship. It is almost like a birth scene, so that's more egg symbolism. Then, of course, astronaut Dave, in one of the podcraft, goes through that Stargate sequence, ending up on the other side of it in a strange decorated room. And it's here, I think, we get our final egg symbolism, right here, as Dave ends up, finally, in a bizarre cocoon of light on a bed, looking like a baby. It's explicit egg symbolism, as Dave is finally birthed into the star child in our final shot. So, to start our sum up, it might seem strange at first to say that there is actually egg symbolism in 2001 A Space Odyssey, but I think that not only is there egg symbolism here, but after you start to notice it, some of it is quite obvious, like the hats of the space shuttle crew. I'm going to say that the spacecrafts, like the shuttle and also the pods of the Jupiter mission, also can symbolize eggs. Even though they're more round than egg-shaped, they're suggestive of an egg, also for their function of being a protective outer shell for the life forms inside. Stanley Kubrick wasn't usually obvious, and I think it's been left up to the audience to a degree to interpret the symbolism, because this film is full of that. Of course, what does an egg actually do? Eventually, it hatches. So I think we have to look at the latter part of the Jupiter mission, where we see not only shots of astronauts emerging from the pods like a life form coming out of an egg, but also violently being thrust out of the egg-shaped pod, like Dave when he has to get back inside the main ship. And of course, the Star Child cocoon we see at the end of the film, which sees Dave morph into a new life form. Also, interesting side note is here is the first shot in the film showing egg-like planets. And now look at the last shot of the film with the star child inside an egg-shaped cocoon. It's pretty interesting that egg symbolism is literally in the first and last shots of this film. And it's quite obvious that metamorphosis and rebirth are themes in this epic film, and the theme of evolution that also runs through it. Hey, well, that's my new video about the egg symbolism in 2001 A Space Odyssey. Hope you liked it. I'm definitely working on something new for next week, and I'll try and have that up soon. Also, it would definitely help my channel if you did subscribe, but either way, my name is Shim. Thank you for spending time with me, and have a great day.